Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Friends with Manners. I'm your host, Lorraine Peters. And well, after 10 months, COVID-19 still has a firm grip on us here in New Brunswick. Almost all of us can relate to the implications that COVID has brought to us, such as the physical distancing, the social restriction, the various levels of our province being locked down or in orange phase. We can all relate to the financial ramifications, maybe to ourselves or to people that we know, and the mental fragility that it has caused, and economic devastation right across the country. We all can relate to that. But what only a handful of us New Brunswickers can relate to is the experience of a positive COVID-19 diagnosis and everything that brings. So my guests today have a firsthand account of that, a positive COVID diagnosis and hospitalization for one of them. And they're here today to share their story with us. So I'd like to welcome Tijuan and Heather Leblanc. Thank you very much for being with me and willing to share your very personal, very current experience with this COVID-19 diagnosis.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to start, the best way to tell a story is right from the beginning, I'm told. So I want to talk about, walk me through what kind of people were you before COVID? You know what I mean? Like, were you the super, Heather, I should say, I know you. And so I have some insight into your personality. You're very pragmatic and follow the rules, and you like to do things right. And I know that about you folks. So, but tell us, what kind of COVID law abiders were you before it hit so close to home?
Well, I'd have to say that Jean and I have never traveled out of the province since the pandemic began in March. So that's definitely something in itself to be said, that we've always stayed within our own province, and to avoid, contact with other provinces in case, you would come across a case that you didn't know that you were around. But we've also had to follow different social distancing rules and abide by things in our own gym, the wearing of the masks now. And, that's also been a challenge, but we definitely believe in the masks. We'll get back to that a little bit later, but yeah, we've definitely been a firm believer of the pandemic, and it's serious, it's a serious situation. And Jean and I have always tried to do things by the book, and we feel that we've done a pretty good job up until a few weeks ago, when our lives changed dramatically.
Yes.
I think we followed the protocol that was asked by our Minister of Health. We wore the mask, we did the social distancing, washed our hands like everybody else. Depending on if we were in code orange or code yellow, we followed those criterias. I think before it happens, you never think it's going to happen to you, because you just don't think it's going to happen, because we weren't putting ourselves out there for it to happen to us. Like, we didn't travel, we followed all the protocols, and we were very surprised when we were told we had COVID-19. And to this date, we still don't know where we got it. That's not really important to us, because I'm sure nobody sets out to give you COVID-19.
No,
so
that's
remember,
right.
We got it from, maybe they didn't know they had it. If they did and they were out and about, well, that's on them, but I don't think so. And that's basically how it all unraveled for us. We just followed the rules, but we never thought we would get COVID-19.
Yeah. So do you have any sense, guys, of like the days before, like the handful of days before you got the diagnosis? Like, is there any, had you been going and about your business the very same, just going to the same places like the gym or the grocery store? Like, do you have any, in retrospect, a sense of, can you walk us through the days before?
Sure, I can start, and Jean can kind of finish a little bit. But leading up to us, I guess, having a few symptoms that we kind of masked as a little bit of like more or less a flu. So obviously we definitely know that flus still exist, but we never really put ourselves in that position to think that it would be COVID-19, you know, masked as a flu or vice versa, right? So the week before Christmas, Jean started to feel a little bit unwell. He had a little bit of a cough and a fever associated with that, a little bit of fatigue. But that didn't last very long. He seemed to be coming around, you know, after a few days. And then when he was starting to come around, I had a little bit of a stuffy nose and a little bit of a headache with that. So it was kind of a sinus headache, which I've had in the past a million times. So we usually get sick every December because it's flu season, right? So we didn't really think anything of it, obviously. I had a low-grade fever with that, but it lasted about 36 hours and then it disappeared. So not long after that, Jean had a little bit of muscle aches and pain. He kind of avoided a couple of appointments that week because he just wasn't feeling the greatest. And we then made the decision at just the day before Christmas that he would remain home just to be safe. My mother has a pulmonary fibrosis, a lung condition. His mother is 94 years old. So, you know, that had an impact on everything going on.
Yeah. So when did you really kind of suspect it? Like, when did it kind of just enter your own brain? Maybe you didn't verbalize it, but when did it kind of cross your mind with each other that could this be?
Personally, for me, it never entered my mind until they told me at the hospital, because every other year, I get a December flu anyway. And I had basically the same symptoms that I always have. So I never suspected anything about COVID. My taste buds or my smell was not affected. I didn't have a headache. I was just feeling under the weather. I was even still working out. But just on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I was really not feeling that well. And a few days later, that's when Heather suggested that I go to the outpatient just to get checked out. But I didn't think I was going to get checked out and have COVID. But
the thing is that the thing I didn't mention was that on Christmas Day, at Christmas dinner at my parents' place, I grew up in a small community of Sackville, New Brunswick, and I went there to a gathering of 18 people. So it was pretty horrible to find I had COVID after you were present at a gathering. So while eating my supper, I couldn't taste or smell my food. And I thought that was an odd symptom to have. And I knew right away that that was a symptom that they all spoke about, that 90% of the patients with that symptom, it's possibly a good chance you have COVID. So I started to really get, alarmed right away. So when I came home and saw Jean on the couch and he was really starting to deteriorate more and more, I decided to go for a COVID test the next day on Boxing Day morning before we took him to the hospital. So we kind of doubled up on our, on trying to get this rectified and figure out what was going on with Jean. I figured if I tested positive, then chances are he probably was positive. So after I came back from my test, we finally convinced him to go to the hospital and get checked. And I'm so glad that we did, because he wasn't breathing that well when I arrived back from my test. So that was our, I guess, green light to say go.
Our cue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had fairly different symptoms, wouldn't you say?
Totally different.
Different.
Not even remotely the same.
No, I had no cough. I had no like aches or pains, not really any fatigue, hardly. I had no fever except for the first, day with my sinus pain and plugged nose, but that's it. Had no diarrhea. We had no sore throats. So there was a lot of different symptoms for both of us that I think that's important to tell people, because, that's the scary part, is that these symptoms are all exactly the same as flu-like symptoms in influenza. And the only one symptom that does not, mimic COVID-19, or no, that does not mimic the flu, is the loss of taste and smell. And that's what triggered me to go get tested. So,
right. If it hadn't been for that odd symptom, you're saying, it would have been almost like, as John said, something he gets every December anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that we should have been a little bit more concerned for our health and more aware that, don't just presume that it's the flu. If you really are unwell, call 811 and get a test and go. That's on us. We probably could have done it, but I mean, we can't do it. I mean, it's too late now. And at least now we know, and we can pass this on to others so that they're aware of, the symptoms, and they'll get tested.
Yeah, because you could have, like me, not too many symptoms, or that you think are symptoms, and still have COVID.
Exactly. So where did, oh, sorry, go ahead, Heather.
I was just going to say that, remember too, we had some symptoms. We started to feel better. Everything was good. And all of a sudden, we started to have symptoms again. I was good all Christmas week. And then all of a sudden I had an odd symptom on Christmas Day that just triggered. So you really got to watch the cycle of this, because you could think you're doing really well and your flu is, improving, but all of a sudden, and remember too, Jean and I were masking a lot of this with cold medicine and Advil. So that would make you feel better, right?
Right.
It would cure it, but it will make you feel better. So there's a lot of factors.
There are a lot of factors, and you hit on something, really classic across all of us. You start to feel better, so you're like, oh, okay, I guess, nothing to worry about. And then all of a sudden you're very unwell. So, it's completely understandable how you would, draw those conclusions. Very, very, very confusing for sure.
Very scary.
Very scary. So do you remember, what was the first thought, either of you, Heather or Jean, what was the first thought when you found out you were positive? Like, was it disbelief? Like, what went through your head?
Well, I won't speak for Jean, but I know that when we were in the room after they were going to keep him overnight, when we had gone to the hospital, and when I had gone back to see how he was doing and talk to the doctor, I was told that he had pneumonia. So I was like, at first I was like, okay, good. He's got pneumonia. I mean, not good, but it's not COVID. He's got pneumonia. That makes sense now. Now I understand. That's why I wasn't breathing well. That's, so in the beginning, we still had no clue that it would be COVID-19. We just thought it was pneumonia, and he would, stay overnight in the hospital and clear up his lungs, and everything would be fine the next day, and we'd all be back to normal. But as the doctors kept entering the room and asking us a lot of life-threatening questions, like, can we put him on a ventilator if we have to? If he needs to be resuscitated, do you give consent? I mean, these were questions that were starting to really concern me and alarm him. And, basically the doctors were very, 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 like, they didn't sugarcoat anything. Like, it was a very serious situation. And we still didn't know we had COVID. And finally, when the last doctor came in and said, we're sending you to ICU immediately, and I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Leblanc, you have COVID-19. And Ms. Leblanc, I have your test right here from this morning. You're also tested positive for COVID-19. Well, we just looked at each other, just shaking our head, like in disbelief. Like, we honestly did not believe that this was happening. Like, I thought my whole world just shattered and fell apart. And to make it even worse, for Jean also, it was horrible, because I had to leave him immediately I was escorted out of there, didn't have time to like kiss him goodbye or say, I love you, I hope everything's okay. All I knew is he was going to ICU, he had pneumonia, and they were asking me life-threatening questions. So it led us, both of us, to believe that, you know what, this could be a lot more serious than what we think. And like, so it was a horrible experience leaving the hospital, not knowing if your husband was going to live or die. It was horrible. I don't know if you want to add to that.
John, yeah, can you pick up on that, John? How you remember feeling as you went through those various scenarios that Heather just.
It just, I mean, for myself, when the last doctor told me I had COVID and that I'd be going to the ICU, that's when it really hits home. And then you start thinking, wow, I'm in bad shape, I guess. I didn't feel like I was that much in bad shape, but I'm not a doctor either. And on my way to ICU, I was, had a lot of thoughts. I was thinking a lot about what's going on. Like, I'm isolated. But once I got to ICU, the doctor that took care of me there was another doctor. That was the fourth doctor I seen that day. She was 100%. She was very positive, and she made me feel like this might be a serious situation, but they have it under control, and it made me feel a whole lot better.
You know, you saw 4 doctors, and you said the last one was, put you at ease or explain things in a way that was more palatable. What do you think perhaps could have been said differently by the others? Or do you think that they were just...
I think they were just being cautious in letting me know that I had a serious condition, because I never think that it's a serious condition. I'm like everybody else. I have a cold, or I have this, or I have that, but I'm not a poor pity me type of person. And if I'm sick, I suck it up. And I think they just wanted to tell me or make me realize the seriousness of what I had, which was a pneumonia, plus I had COVID-19.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So how many days did you spend in the hospital?
I was just there for 2 days. I spent 2 days there. Yeah.
For 2 days. Okay. Yeah. And, on a scale of 1 to 10, did you ever, what level of concern was the highest you were at? We'll say 1, you weren't concerned at all. 10, you were very fearful of the outcome. Where do you think you were in that?
I think the minute that I spoke to the last doctor, I felt a whole lot better about the situation. She told me that I needed oxygen, which they gave to me through my nose. And the next morning she came in, took some more tests, told me that everything was going well. My blood work was even getting better. And my lungs were clearing up. So I don't think I ever felt like I was going to die because of her, because of the way she treated me and the positivity that was coming from her.
I see. That's good. That's good to hear. Okay. In our time that we have left, now I want to go, you've been discharged from the hospital. You and Heather are together again. Walk me through what began to happen after that.
Well, I think what happened after that is that we both, Heather felt guilty because she went to a few events, not knowing she had COVID. And then she had to backtrack and give the names of everybody who had to self-isolate. And some people had to stay away from work. And she felt guilty about that. Myself, once I got home, I started mending pretty quick. A good friend of mine, Steve Sweeney, helped me along with some natural supplements, and he boosted my immune system. And I started feeling great probably the second or third day that I was home. So for me, it was a different feeling than for Heather. I didn't feel that guilt because I never went out. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed home during the Christmas break. And for me, it was just a matter of getting myself back into training, because that's what makes me feel good. And every day I was progressing. So from myself, I felt great.
Physically, he was the person that struggled physically. I was the person that struggled most mentally.
Yeah. So Heather, in the time that we have left, will you walk us through a little bit of that? And I know it's your desire to keep this very positive, because that is the kind of person that I know both of you to be. So in a way that is gets your you can convey what you experienced because you experienced it. Walk us through that.
Okay, so I was contacted immediately by public health at the hospital with Jean as soon as they told me I had COVID-19. So they are doing their job and they're doing it well. They went through with me over the next 2 days, all the contact tracing. I had to write down everything of where I went, what I bought, all the places that I went. I had to go through receipts. I had to go through my calendar. I had to go through bank statements. So it made me go back 2 weeks. So it was very extensive. That was stressful because I was with Jean's family on Christmas Eve, which was 7 people. I was with my parents and their family of 18 people on Christmas Day, not to mention all of the different service providers, you know, hairstylist, dog groomer, you know, wherever little places that I went, they all had to be contacted. So it was very humiliating for me. It was embarrassing because a lot of these people are not told who you are, but a lot of them can figure it out, especially, you know, with a family of 18, not everybody knows how to be confidential and keep everything secretive. So it's not really confidential like public health says it is. And it's not them that's revealing the names. It's the people, the people they're contacting. You can figure it out. I mean, people knew it was us within 2 days. And it's just by word of mouth. One person tells one person, that one person tells 2 people, those 2 people tell 5 people. And it just spreads like a wildfire.
And so what was the stigma or the feeling attached to that? What did you hear from people?
Well, there was a few people close to us that thought that I put my mother's life in jeopardy because I went there. You know, knowing Jean was sick, maybe I should have stayed home, which, you know, I can, you know, I guess agree with that to a point, but I was very symptomatic and I felt great, you know, but that doesn't matter. You know, we still shouldn't be ignoring our symptoms prior to that. So, you know, it was a huge lesson for me. Some of them very upset because they had to isolate for 14 days. I upset a lot of gatherings at New Year's Eve. I upset, you know, families. Some families that were even in contact with my parents were paranoid and wouldn't let their kids go to hockey. I mean, it really impacted a lot more than what people think it does. You know, and that's one person that like impacted that many people, right?
So were you surprised, Heather, at the lack of empathy for you not doing it on purpose and, you know, sounding the alarm as soon as you thought, okay, I need to go get tested? Were you surprised at the lack of empathy towards your situation?
100%. I thought there was too much blaming, shaming, and naming going on. I think that they treat COVID cases very unsympathetically, I guess. They always try to find fault in the person that catches COVID. They always try to blame that we did something to catch it and it's our fault, and that we should be not trying to spread that to everyone else, which I am happy to report that every person I was in contact with that I know of, especially family, everybody had to go get tested, obviously, some twice, and they all tested negative, thankfully.
That is fabulous news, yeah.
But with the few derogatory comments that were made, we're very grateful to all the people that reached out to us, that either by text, by phone call, by message on Messenger. Yes, people bought us grocery, picked us up groceries. It was overwhelming to see how much support that we really had. So that's the positivity. If you look at how much positivity there is, it's probably 95% and 5% negative. So I never dwell on the negative. Sometimes Heather does, but I prefer to dwell on the positive, and we did have a lot of support.
I love that. That's wonderful to hear that you didn't allow, one or two negative people to, really overshadow all the grace and goodness that you experienced. We have 1 minute left. What would you say to New Brunswickers? If you could say one thing about all of this, what is it you want to convey about this whole COVID mess?
If you feel any symptoms, go get checked out. If you do have COVID, don't feel guilty about it. You're not the only one. There's in Montreal or in Quebec and in Ontario, COVID is rampant. Down there, when you catch COVID, it's not that it's no big deal, but nobody even looks at you twice. The smaller the community, they might look at you, but hey, you didn't do anything wrong. You just happened to be a victim.
Right. Heather, what would you like to, what do you think is important? We have 1 minute. What would you like to say to people?
I would just like people to, have faith and trust in our healthcare system, that they're doing their very best that they possibly can. They're overwhelmed, obviously, especially over the last few days with the cases, accumulating over the holidays. But, let's not blame and shame people for that. It could be a lot of people that are catching this that very innocently, very asymptomatic, don't know where they got it either. So, we just need to be more understanding and really treat everyone with respect and dignity, and, just reach out and show someone that you care. And I just want this to be a very positive experience for the next COVID case or victim that, this happens to. And, we're open to ever talking to them or discussing it with them, and we'll be more than happy to help them with anything that they need. They need a grocery or coffee.
Thanks, you guys. I'm going to stop you there and give time to wrap up. I can't thank you enough, Heather and Tijuan. Leblanc, thank you so much. And to my Rogers viewers, be kind to everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.